We have a rather short parable in today's gospel, but a very powerful one, and one that has a lot of important spiritual lessons for us. But as we look at this parable, focuses first on the Pharisee. And the Pharisees were the most respected of the spiritual leaders of the Jewish people. They were known for their holiness and their fidelity to God's laws, which makes it all the more shocking for someone hearing this parable that this Pharisee's prayer is rejected. And why is his prayer rejected? Well, he came to pray out of an attitude of arrogance. He already believed that he was righteous before God. And so when he comes to prayer, he says, I'm not like all these other people. I'm following all the laws. I'm fasting. I'm tithing. Basically, he came to brag in his prayers more than to offer an authentic prayer to God. But he already believed that he was righteous in his own eyes. The word righteous means to be in a right relationship with God. And it's related to the virtue of justice. So if someone is righteous, that means they're in a proper relationship with God. There's no imbalance or no injustice in that relationship. If a person has committed sin, that would create injustice in that relationship. Because we owe everything to God. He's our creator. He has made us. Everything we have, everything we are belongs to him. And we owe him our total obedience. So when we disobey him and commit sin, that creates injustice in the relationship. And so if we're justified, that means we're pleasing to God. But this Pharisee assumed that he was justified, that he was right in his own eyes. He had no sins to confess, and he gave no credit to God for the position that he was in. And he just basically looked down on others. And so we call this arrogance. We call this the sin of pride. Placing yourself above others. And if we compare that to the tax collector knew that he wasn't worthy. And he was seeking God. Ultimately, we are justified. We are made righteous, not through our own efforts. Not because we're so great or we're so holy. But we're made righteous by the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. When we commit sin and there's disorder and injustice in the relationship, Jesus Christ is the one who on the cross paid the price for our sin and made it possible for us again to be in a right relationship with God. And so it's through his sacrifice on the cross and through his grace that we're made righteous, not on our own. As we look at this, spiritual pride, it's probably more common than we might think. And so I think it's good first for us to do an examination of conscience and to look at ourselves. When we come to Mass or when we turn to prayer, do we assume that we're good people because of that? Sometimes people assume that, well, I'm coming to Mass every week, so I'm doing pretty good, and I'm better than all these other people who aren't coming to Mass. But that's the same attitude that the Pharisee had when he came to pray. Compare that to an attitude that we should have when we come to Mass, that we recognize that we're here because we need God. Not because we're so great and we're so holy, but because we need to be here, that we need God in order to become righteous. That we need the forgiveness that he offers in order to heal our sin and to heal the brokenness that's within us. And we come here because we know that we need the love that he offers us to heal the loneliness and the isolation in our hearts. That we need him. And that without God, we are nothing. And if we don't have God, we have nothing. But that with God in our lives, we have everything. We should come here with the attitude of beggars, knowing that we need Jesus Christ in order to be whole and to be fulfilled. And so I think that's a good question for us to ask ourselves. What attitude do we have when we come to Mass? Do we just assume that, hey, we're doing pretty good, we're here at Mass, we're all right, we're better than most people? Or do we recognize that we're here because we need God? There's a study done by the Pew Research Center a couple years ago about millennials. And full disclosure, I am a millennial, so I'll need to be careful what I say here. But what they found was 80% of millennials believe in God. And they identify with statements where they're seeking spirituality. They desire inner peace and things like that. But only 40% claim that religion is very important in their lives. So 80% believe in God and seek out some form of spirituality. They might be interested in yoga or New Age spirituality or inner peace, but only 40% claim that any form of religion is important, which is why you'll often hear people say, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. But the reality is, they're falling into the same issue that the Pharisee had. They think that they can become righteous on their own. They think that they can be spiritual and attain inner peace without religion, meaning without the gospel of Jesus Christ, without his sacrifice on Calvary, without the sacraments. The Mass is where the sacrifice of Jesus Christ is presented to us again, and it's our participation in the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. So they think they can become righteous and attain inner peace without religion, without Jesus Christ, without the sacraments, without the teaching of the church, and without the guidance that the church offers us. And the reality is that's not possible. We can't become righteous on our own. And so when people seek to be spiritual without religion, they're setting themselves up for failure, because they're never going to find true peace, and they're never going to be made righteous before God on their own. We can't do that on our own power. We need Jesus Christ. And that's why we need organized religion. In particular, we need the church that Jesus Christ established. If we could be righteous on our own, we would not have needed Jesus Christ. We would not have needed him to be born in Bethlehem. We would have not needed the sacrifice on Calvary. But the reality is, God did become man. He entered into human history. He offered his life on Calvary, and he established a church upon Peter. And he did all of these things because we need those things in order to become righteous. We need them for our salvation. And so as we reflect upon these readings and as we reflect upon the spiritual lessons that Christ teaches us in this parable, I think it's important for us to have a true and authentic attitude of humility in our prayer, recognizing that we don't become righteous on our own. We cannot become righteous without the church and without the sacraments. But we need Jesus Christ. We need his sacrifice, and we need the sacraments that bring the grace from Calvary to us here today. And so we come here not because we're righteous and because we're perfect people, but because we need the grace of the sacraments and we need the power of Jesus Christ. And with that, we will become righteous through the power of God, not through our own power.